The news from Lake Wobegon is brought to you by Total Cereal. All 6 flavors provide 100% daily value of at least 11 essential vitamins and minerals. Total, 100% nutrition.
Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, my hometown, out on the edge of the prairie. It's been cold and rainy out there this last week, which gives all the farmers a chance to come into the Chatterbox Cafe and drink coffee endlessly and complain, which is one of the great arts of farmers. They're so good at it. And it is an art, especially for Christian people who operate under these impossible commandments to give thanks always and to praise continually, which was a notion that was put forward in the Holy Land, a place where they didn't have winter 6 months out of the year. And when you are shoveling continuously, it's hard to be grateful continuously. And we're just not as good at it. And also, it's just not as interesting to know how to complain and to know just how far to go, so that we pull up short of cursing God, but we do want to let him know what's going on here. Because God listens to the blues as much as he listens to gospel music. Yes, God listens when people talk and they say, well, lost all my livestock, whole family wiped out. And now with all this rain, I can't get into the fields and plant corn and soybeans. Not that I'd be able to anyway, because my entire body is covered with boils. And my body is laced with pain. I'm sitting here in the fire with ashes on me. But it could be worse. It could be worse. I could be visited by close friends trying to comfort me. This is the art of complaint, you see. This is the art of complaint. And when you hear farmers complain, you're hearing artists at work to do something you know you should not be doing, and yet do it so well that you are able to entertain people who also know it should not be done. This is art. To hear a man talk about how he's been fighting with his wife for the last few weeks because of a bad smell in the house, and he just figured out that last summer when he put in the insulation, he put in the plastic lining on the wrong side, the outside, so that it collected the moisture, but it froze on the other side of the insulation. So there was a glacier of ice up in the attic, and now it's melting and it's dripping down the walls, and there's mildew, and it stinks to high heaven, and everything's going to have to be redone, all the drywall and the insulation. And the wife has gone off to stay with her parents and taken the kids with her and said, "You call me when you're done." So he's there pulling all this smelly insulation down and the drywall off the ceiling, and he was wearing his swimming trunks because he's so sweaty and getting so messy anyway. And he was standing on a stool to reach for this, and the dog sniffed him. This is an artist at work complaining. And somehow when the Lutherans sing for the beauty of the earth, it's not as good. Their hearts are not in it. The earth is beautiful, but it's not more beautiful for our singing, believe me. It's not more beautiful for our preaching. Sometimes you just have to be still and appreciate what's around you, and that's what we do this time of the year. These beautiful birds are arriving at our bird feeders, the scarlet tanagers and the vireos and all these gorgeous warblers and grosbeaks that, of course, go south for the winter, but they want to come north to raise their children, as, of course, anybody would if they could. Here they are in our midst. It's a time when all the grade school kids go on field trips because the kids and the teachers are all getting kind of ragged around the edges. And as long as nothing is going on in those little heads, you might as well get out of the classroom, go out for a walk, go out through the nature area and have the child have its first experience with a Minnesota wood tick and discover that there is such a thing as a food chain and we are part of it. And they go off to the historical society and they look at old dishes and somebody's old wedding dress and old lithographs and photographs and some arrowheads and go off and have themselves a time. There was a volunteer at the historical society who has not been there in the past. A young man, well, young, 40. He just came back to town, made everybody nervous. 40 years old, he just suddenly came back 3 weeks ago, surprised everybody. Grew up in Lake Wobegon, was a shining star in the high school, went off to college, went off to New York, had a good job in publishing. And he was doing well for himself, although his mother was a little worried about the fact that he hadn't married, but he seemed to be doing well. And then suddenly, he arrived back home without much explanation of why or for how long. She said, "Are you okay?" He said, "Fine, I'm fine." "What inspired you to come home?" "I didn't know you were going to, honey. I just decided to take a break." "Well, for how long, honey?" "Well, I don't know. Just not too long. Just a while." "Is everything okay?" "Nothing." "No, I'm fine. Fine, just decided to come home for a visit." His parents operate their house as a kind of museum and interpretive center for their 6 children who are now all grown up and gone away. He was the youngest. And his bedroom is still there. They ought to put a velvet rope across the door because little single bed there, the little maple desk, and all the books are there in a row. The Sugar Creek Gang books that he got Sunday school, and the Landmark books, and the Little House on the Prairie. They're all there. And his plane models, the balsa wood models, and the little slot car set. He stepped into the room, went back to his old life, and he laid down on his bed. He left New York because he was on his way to the airport to go off to San Francisco. He works editing a magazine downtown Manhattan for an old publisher, the Lady of 1,000 Facelifts. Publishes a magazine called Modern Serenity, and he was in a limo on his way to LaGuardia to get on a plane and go to San Francisco and give a speech at a Serenity conference in San Francisco. And there was an accident on the Triborough Bridge, and traffic just stopped. He was late for the plane. His cell phone was ringing, people calling him from the office. It was just a hellish afternoon. And then he wondered, where is my speech? He opened up his laptop, and suddenly he remembered he wrote it last night, and he forgot to save it. And he couldn't remember a thing that he had in there. It was just a horrific hour. And right there in the back seat of a Lincoln Town car, he had a nervous breakdown on very nice leather upholstery. And being a Lutheran boy from Minnesota, it was a very quiet nervous breakdown. He just started to cry. And he said, "Oh, Mama. Oh, Mama." He told the limo driver, "Just keep driving." They crossed over the Tappan Zee Bridge and they went up the shore and they stopped by the water, the Long Island Sound. And he looked out at the water. His cell phone rang. He took it out of his pocket. He threw it high, high. And it made a beautiful splash in the water. He said, "Take me back to LaGuardia. I'm going to get on a plane back to Minnesota." So he got on the plane and flew back and rented a car and drove north and up over the hill past the grain terminal and back to home. And there he was. "Everything okay with you, honey?" "Yes, everything's fine. I just decided to take some time off." It's a magazine called Modern Serenity. The publisher's name is Morning Star. She changed it about 20 years ago from Marilyn Sorensen. Family's Norwegian. Great-grandfather started the publishing business, little Sunday school magazine called De Småbarnsbladet, the little child's newspaper. And then little children stopped speaking Norwegian, so it became a kind of a Sunday school magazine in the Evangelical Lutheran Church called De Norske Sunday Solskin, the Sunday Sunshine. And then her grandfather had a little difference of opinion doctrinally with the Evangelical Lutherans. He woke up one morning and he thought, Trinity? I don't think so. Where did that come from? So suddenly he was cast off into sort of the outer reaches of the Methodist Church. And it was publishing the Methodist Messenger. And now, over the years, the Sorensen family has traversed a long spiritual path from the fringes of Methodism over to some kind of spiritualism, over to a sort of a transcendentalism based on a belief in the healing properties of plants and making a connection with the vegetable world, the great circle of vegetable being. Eating the right vegetables can heal our ailments, and having them around us purifies the air of negative energy. And after we die, we become them. Morning Star believes particularly in kohlrabi, believes that kohlrabi is the next big thing. And a lot of Modern Serenity magazine is devoted to kohlrabi. Articles like 10 ways to get kohlrabi into your life. A lot about connecting with plants and the right sort of plants to have around. Morning Star believes in this, but she believes in a lot of things. She also believes in facelifts. She's had a great many of them. Hard to tell just how many or how old she is. She could be in her late 70s. She could be 130. It would be hard to tell. The eyes have a sort of a perpetual look of surprise about them. And the area around the mouth looked as if she'd been stuffed and left in the attic too long. Her hair, it looks natural, but which species is the question? Angora, Highland cattle, something of the sort. And her nose is so tiny, so fragile, so angular, you think, what if she sneezed? It'd blow her face off. She believes in facelifts and vegetables, and she also believes in vodka, deeply. I don't know what your experience has been with vodka. I hope not extensive. But people who are familiar with vodka tell me that it's a very slippery liquor, and it carries you down swiftly, painlessly into oblivion, which often arrives before you are aware of it. For her, oblivion arrives in the mid-afternoon. And she lies down on the couch in her office on the 14th floor overlooking the Hudson River, and her kind secretary comes in and pulls the shades and puts a quilt over her. And the grass waves on the screensaver, and she sleeps. He walked away from this job, come home, because, if the truth be told, he wanted to see his mother. As simple as that. He wanted to be in her kitchen one more time and smell the detergent and smell the wax and hear her voice. And after all of the northern Italian cuisine and all of the fish that's seared so it's dry and salty and peppery on the outside and raw in the middle, he's longed to have tuna hot dish and to taste it again, made from macaroni and chicken of the sea tuna out of cans and peas and cream of mushroom soup for sauce with a little Lipton's dried onion soup mix for spice and some crunched potato chips on top, and to eat it once again. They had it the other night, and after supper, she came and stood behind him and put her hands on his shoulder. And she said, "Should I be worried about you?" Which she used to ask him when he went out on dates. He said, "No, I'm fine." Both of them knowing that, of course, she should be worried, but there is nothing that she can do except pray, and the life of a parent is all prayer, all the time. Oh, he's been thinking as he's been in Lake Wobegon living with his parents. He's been looking at the young women he went to high school with in this town, some of whom do not look so bad, especially when you've been living with your parents for 2 weeks. He can imagine being in a car with some of them as he used to be many years ago when they sat in a car and touching their cheeks and their arms and their hands and kissing them and touching their necks and their shoulders and circling around the forbidden areas. And then touching the forbidden areas, but over cloth, only over cloth. Coming as close to danger as possible. He can imagine being in a car with a young woman coming close to danger and talking in a hopeful way about the future, but without making any promises. I'm fine, he said. I'm going back to New York on Sunday night. I spoke to my boss, and she's got to go in and have another operation, another facelift. She wants me back. They need me there to edit the magazine, and it's the best job I can find. So I'm going back to the apartment and the girlfriend and the job. Morning Star has to go back in to have her face lifted. Her nose seems to be cracking. He remembers a Mother's Day. Oh, this was when he was small. He was a little boy. And he and his 5 brothers and sisters woke up early on Mother's Day and decided they would make a great gift for Mother. They would make scrambled eggs, her favorite. All of these little kids worked together to make scrambled eggs, and they turned out to be a little green. So they decided they would put in some chunks of raspberry jello to give it a kind of a Christmas look. And they made toast, and they came right in the bedroom, and Mother and Dad seemed to be struggling under the blankets. They seemed to be wrestling or something. And the kids said, "Happy Mother's Day." And Daddy let out a yelp. And Daddy wrapped a blanket around him, and he went off into the bathroom, and Mother sat up all sweaty and happy and smiley. And all of her children came up into the bed around her to watch her eat the scrambled eggs with the raspberry jello and give her a card that said, "We love you, Mommy," spelled out in pieces of twig glued to green construction paper. She wept to see it. She said, "This is the best scrambled eggs I've ever had in my life." And that was when the bed fell. It went boom. They laughed and they laughed and they laughed. It was the funniest thing. Food all over and coffee all over and children all over. What a mess. What a beautiful mess. What beautiful chaos life is. It's too bad if we don't have time to appreciate it. It became a story in their family whenever things were chaotic but happy, and you asked someone how they were. They said, "Okay, the bed fell, but it could be worse." That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above that.